Some water.
Very well. I'll just do a brief recap of what happened during the last session before we move on. You gave us your biographical information and also told us what you witnessed during the 1994 coup d'etat. During the last session, you had just started telling us about what CDS Nur Cham told you when you walked into his office after your trip from Darfur. Kindly just repeat for the commission what exactly he said.
When I entered the office, he waited until his orderly got into the office, and then he said, MB, we have decided to remove him.
What is MB?
Well, that's my initial.
And just kindly tell us what it means, your initial.
Mahmud Babadi.
Okay. So he was referring to you.
That's correct.
And when was this statement made? On what date?
The day I reported to him just after arriving from Darfur, it's normal, for a senior officer who has been away on official mission to report to the CDS on arrival.
Can you remember the dates? Was it in 2004?
It was in 2005, around December.
And what was your reaction to this statement?
I was shocked and I just kept quiet.
And how did he react to your expression of shock?
Knowing Durcham's character, he just giggled over it.
What do you mean he giggled over it?
He just laughed over it.
And what was his character like?
He's somebody who jokes a lot.
So he's a little bit of a comedian. Would you say that?
Somehow.
So did you take his statement seriously?
At that instant, I didn't even know what to say, because somebody who is just arriving from overseas mission without knowing what had been happening in the country, I just dispel it as one of those jokes.
But as a senior official in the Gambian National Army, you were aware of the seriousness of such a statement, weren't you?
That is very correct. But in those days, you can put yourself into trouble by reporting or even by not reporting. So it was like a catch-22 situation.
So you understood and believed that this statement was potentially treasonous?
Very, very treasonous.
But you chose not to report it?
I chose not to report it for the simple reason that in those days, you see, people scheme against each other for position. Like you have people who they will go to any extent to manufacture something against you if they want to put you in trouble, to elbow you out, and that was what was happening in those days. So it's like by keeping silence, I think that was the way to send a signal to him that, look, please don't say this to me anymore.
So you didn't respond to his statement?
I didn't respond at all.
And what consequently happened after he made those statements and you failed to respond?
He never discussed that with me anymore until when I resumed work at the joint headquarters. By then he had also moved, when I went to the defense headquarters, when I reported for work at the defense headquarters, by then he had also moved to the defense headquarters and assume his position as the CDS.
And when was this?
When I returned from Darfur, I was on a 2 weeks disembarkation leave. So it was when I returned from my leave that I met him at the defense headquarters. That will be around, I think, in January of 2006.
2006.
Supposedly.
And what happened when you met him for the second time?
For the second time, as director of admin and logistics at the time, I was like the conduit between the headquarters and, civilian departments or wherever correspondent has to go, horizontally or vertically, from the military, from the defense headquarters to units, to services. So I had the opportunity to have unfettered access to his office to discuss issues with him.
And what happened when you met him?
In one of those innings, I entered with a file, and as I entered, he looked up and said, if I have the chance, I'm going to kick him. I just kept quiet.
Whose picture was he looking up at?
Yaya Jammeh's picture.
And who was Yaya Jammeh?
He was the president of the Gambia at the time.
Was it done in the same manner as he did before?
The same.
And what did you understand his statement to mean?
That if he had the chance, that he was going to kick him.
What do you believe he meant by kick him?
Kick? When you kick somebody from his position, it's like you move him.
You get rid of him.
Exactly.
So it was essentially the same thing that he said in a different way.
That's correct.
You've told us that the first time he said this to you, you didn't take him seriously because he was always joking around. And you didn't really make much of the statement. This is the second time he's repeating the same statement to you. What did you feel this time about it?
Well, I just dispel him as, one of those rumors because when Yaya was planning his coup, from what I heard, because I was not in town, they said, he was going around telling people that, he was going to remove Sadauda. And I think he was also using the same route or the same channel, maybe just to sound, people's opinion, or to see how people will react, whether they will report or they will not report. And then we use the same means that Yaya used,
So this was not the first time he was making such statements, or the second time?
That was the second time and last time.
No, you said that he had made similar statements during the Jawara regime. Is that correct?
It was Yaya I was referring to, that during the time of Jawara, I heard he used to tell people that, where's the old man? Is he upstairs? Wait until I get him.
All right, okay, I misunderstood you. So Yaya Jammeh used to make similar statements, and you felt that CDS Nur Cham was using the same strategy or the same tactic?
I should think so.
But you still didn't take him seriously?
I didn't.
And why was that? This is the second time he's telling you this. Didn't you think that it was prudent as a senior military officer to report this to the authorities?
Well, you see, with the kind of structure in the armed forces at the time, for me as a senior officer, I didn't think that Durcham was going to succeed if he wanted to organize a coup, because when you look at the structure at the time, the weaponry, and somebody who just took over as CDS, I don't think he had the base at the time. And when you put all the ingredients together when it comes to military operation, I don't think that he would have succeeded. That's why I just dismissed that this is just kind of a joke.
So you had an opportunity to reason out this statement that he made, and you weighed all your options, and you decided that really he couldn't have been serious.
That is very true.
And what happened after he made this statement to you?
After he made his statement, and that was it, and then we are planning for a trip to Darfur to visit the troops. Lang Tombo was the deputy CDS at the time.
Lang Tombong who?
Lang Tombo Tamba. Myself, the late GRTS anchorman, what's his name again? We were planning to make a trip to Darfur to visit the troops at the time, and then Yaya trip came up. And then Lang told me that, Sarr, let us put this trip on hold. He said, because the president will be traveling, and I don't want to be out of town while he is also away. So we'll put the trip on hold until he comes back. So the trip was put on hold to go to Darfur and visit the troops.
Please go ahead.
And in the interim, there was this nomination to attend a seminar in Burkina Faso. So the file was not treated. So I realized that it was not. So I took it to Ndurcham. I told him that, sir, we have not nominated somebody to attend this seminar. And that day was the deadline. And then he asked me to nominate Bunja Dabo. He said, nominate Bunja Dabo for him to attend this program.
And who was Bunja Dabo?
Bunja was the MA to Ndurcham at the time.
What is MA?
Military assistant.
Please go ahead.
So I said, okay. I left the office. On my way to my office, I passed by Bunja's office and informed him that, look, you have been nominated to attend this program in Burkina Faso, and today is the deadline. But prior to that, when Ndurcham was instructing me to send Bunja's nomination, he asked me to go to Lang to tell Lang Tombo that he has nominated Bunja Dabo for the seminar, and if he has any objection. So Lang said, he had no qualms for Bunja's nomination. I said, okay, then that's fine. And I went to my office, opened my computer, tried to send the information via email. I realized that some information, I didn't have Bunja's information. So I called my orderly, asked him to go to Bunja to furnish me with some of the information that I list down that I wanted to send to the organizers. He went to Bunja, got the information, came back to me, and then I sent his nomination. I was there until 4 o'clock. Time for close of work. Ndurcham was still in the office. I wanted to go home. As a junior officer to him, I said, okay, let me go to the office and just seek permission. Tell him that I'm going, hence he's still in the office. When I entered the office, I met Bunja in the office, Bunja Dabo, and the late finance officer Balde. Balde was having a pen and a notebook. So when I entered, well, they just kept quiet. And then I told you, Ndurcham, sir, permission to fall out, hence you are still in the office. And he said, okay. He said, the next day, that was it 23rd? He said he wouldn't be coming to the office in the morning. He said he will be going to Nyakoi. There was this school that the army engineers were constructing at that place. So he said he was going there to see how far they have gone with the construction work. Because before he told me that if he leaves in the afternoon to go there, it will take time for him to return and go home. So what he will do is he will do it in the morning. That he once told me that before, that we prefer to do it in the morning, go there, inspect the level of work, and then get back to the office.
And what date was this that he was communicating with you?
That day was on the 22nd. Yeah, that was, March 22nd.
2006.
2006.
And you said you walked into the office and you met his military assistant, Bunja Adabo, at the time, as well as one Balde. Can you remember his first name?
I cannot remember the first name. We always call him Balde. He was the finance officer, a civilian from the treasury.
And you said when you walked in, they kept quiet.
Exactly.
Did you make anything of that, especially considering the previous conversations you had with Nur Cham?
Well, I wouldn't think that a ballet would be involved in such kind of thing, and moreover, two people cannot, stage a coup, if you want to consider Bunja's presence in Durcham's office, So if at all there were many, one would have understood that maybe they were trying to map out something.
And after he made these serious statements to you, did you, for any reason, perhaps monitor his actions or his movements or things that he did during that time, just to sort of make an assessment as to whether or not these allegations were indeed not serious, as you termed them to be at the time?
Well, that was the last day I set eye on him, because after that day, after I left the office, I didn't see Durcham or neither Bunja.
What I meant was between the first statement he made and the second statement, as well as after he made the second statement to you that he was going to kick Jammeh, did you try to monitor his actions just to make an assessment as to whether that statement was true or not?
Well, you see, I wasn't close to Ndurcham. It was only I associated myself with him based on work ethics, and for the fact that we share the same building. But besides, after working hours, I don't check on him to actually know what is happening, and that's
so
the relationship.
You really didn't pay any attention to what he was doing. That's what you're saying?
Never.
Okay. And you've also said that at this point you were posted as Director of Administration and Logistics at the Ministry of Defense. Is that correct?
No, I was Director of Admin at the Defense Headquarters.
Was that at State House or not?
Defense Headquarters is at Marina Parade. State House is where you have the Ministry of Defense. That's where have the Office of the Permanent Secretary, the Deputy.
And the Defense Headquarters is under the Ministry of Defense.
That's correct, and that's where you have the Office of the Chief of Defense Staff.
The last time you went through your professional career, I think we came up to the point where you told us that you were commander of the Navy. How did you get to this position as Director of Admin and Logistics?
Sometime in 2003, there was one cargo vessel that came to the Gambia. And during her passage from Europe to the Gambia, the vessel encountered rough sea and water entered into the hold of the cargo, and naturally it will wet some of the cement that were inside the hold. So after discharging, they realized that some large quantity of cement were damaged. So they went to court, and there was an injunction for the vessel to be restricted. And we got a court order that we have to send guards on board the cargo ship. That's normal. So I posted guards on board.
What was the name of the vessel?
It was MV Merchant Vessel Suitor.
So this was a commercial vessel, a private vessel?
Commercial vessel. So on a particular day, it was on a weekend. On a weekend, we don't have full complement compared to weekdays where everybody comes to work. Weekend is normal guard duties for people who are on duties, and the complement is less than the normal work days. So in the evening, they had an emergency that they had to attend to. So
who are you referring to as they?
The Navy, the people at the command, that's the Naval Battalion, just adjacent to the ferry terminal. So because my office was at the joint headquarters at the time, and somebody was in charge of the Naval Command, just like when you have a battalion and a battalion commander. So they went and executed the task, and then the duty officer who was on duty that particular day did not send some of these soldiers back on board the ship. He withdrew some soldiers from the boat, leaving one soldier on board the ship. So he did not return the full complement, guard complement, back on board the ship. He left them at the command. And then at night, the sailors realized that they had only one soldier on board. They decided to lock the soldier in one of the cabins, and then they sailed from the Gambia.
And who was this duty officer at the time?
It was Mahmud Singate.
And what was his rank?
He was either a staff sergeant or a WO2. But the head of the command at the time was Sila Kujabi.
And it was Sila Kujabi who deployed these men on board the ship?
Negative, it was the duty officer, Singate.
And he got instructions from who?
Normally, when we have emergency situation, it's the job of the duty officer to see how he can juggle his men. Like he can move men from one patrol boat, because it happened during the day. So naturally, he withdrew some men from different guard posts and then sent them to conduct the task. And what is normal for him to do was to return the guards back to their original guard position. But he didn't do that. He left them at the headquarters because there was a dinghy, a small boat that used to ferry the guards to different guard posts at sea. So he didn't do that. He left them at the headquarters, and then these people left with that one soldier.
And who were those guards that they had retrieved from the vessel to go and perform the emergency duties?
They were Marine unit personnel.
Would
Navy
you happen
personnel.
to know them, their names?
I know about one something Fai. He's late now. He was the one who was left on board the ship. and they went away with him to Freetown. The other guards, definitely, I didn't know them. Perhaps at the time, I knew them, but with time, I've forgotten their names.
And Fai, who was taken to Freetown, what happened to him when he got to Freetown?
When he got to Freetown, I think the government sent some personnel, or they informed the embassy in Sierra Leone, and they took care of him.
So they managed to bring him back, to repatriate him back to the Gambia?
They did that. So when that happened, Singate, who was the duty officer, was taken to Mile 2 for detention, because I reported the matter to the army commander, then Babuka Jatta. So he said we should ask the military police to arrest him, and then later they took him to Mile 2.
Let me just ask some follow-up questions so that we can understand what exactly happened. This NV Cuta, or I can't pronounce the word, but you've mentioned it, the vessel. It was a private vessel, came to Gambian waters with a consignment of cement. And you mentioned that because of some storms that happened in deep seas, the cement got destroyed. It was wet and basically got damaged. And the matter was taken to court. And there was a judgment by the court, or an order by the court, that the ship should be arrested. I think that would be the technical word, the technical legal word. It would be restricted in Gambian waters so that it doesn't move away in case of any damages that may be awarded. And then as a result of enforcing that judgment, the bailiffs of the court had to get in touch with the Navy, and the Navy provided officers to enforce that order of the court. I don't know if this is correct.
Very correct.
And as a result, you sent those officers on board the ship to make sure that it doesn't float away. And it was when this emergency happened that officers were basically removed from the ship, and one lone officer was left on board. And you said that the personnel of the vessel basically locked that particular soldier up, and they were able to move away without any impediment.
That's very true.
So the Navy essentially were neglectful in their duties, and you were the commander at that time. Is that correct?
That's very correct, but when it comes to a situation like that, you have a duty officer and you have somebody who is the battalion commander. The responsibility rests first with the duty officer who derelict on his duty, and then the head of the command, we call him the battalion commander, also shoulder responsibility. But the responsibility doesn't have to go straight up into the chain of command to reach the commander of the Navy for something that is, to me, trivial, because it was a civilian vessel. The cement wasn't ordered by the Gambian government. We were just carrying out our duties as instructed to us by the courts. So if something like that happened, I believe you have people who should take responsibility of it.
And how did the duty officer happen to get to Mile 2? Can you tell us how that all happened?
When I informed the army commander, Babuka Jatta, of what happened, he instructed me to detain the duty officer and inform the military police to come and get him and hand him over to Mile 2 straight away. He said in the meantime, in the interim, he said he will call the president and inform him what happened.
Which president are you referring to?
Yeah, Jammeh. So he called Jammeh. I don't know what he explained to him, because at that time, Jammeh only have one ear. He only listened to the army commander or the chief of staff. He was chief of staff at the time. Whatever he tells him, that's what he will believe. So I don't know what he must have told him. And in the evening, I was at home, and then the Deputy Chief of Staff, Colonel Baji, came to my house and he said, I have instruction from Oga that you should be taken to Mile 2. I said, for what?
Who was Oga?
He said, yeah, Jame. He said, you should be taken to Mile 2. I said, for what? For the escape of Suta. I told him, but that's not my responsibility. I said, you have a naval command. Who's responsible? He said, well, it's an instruction from Oga. I said, okay, then that's fine. So I was taken to Mile 2. I spent about 3 weeks there. A board was constituted to look into what happened, and then they came up with a recommendation. But before they came up with a recommendation, they already decided to move me. It's like I was used as a scapegoat, because later I had the president, got information about what actually happened here at Jammeh. So he ordered Sila Kujabi to be charged. He said, according to what I heard, he said they have sent an innocent man to prison. He was referring to me. And then Sila lost his seniority for about 2 years. And they tried to make it hush-hush. So by then they already moved me away from the Navy.
So that was the circumstances under which you were moved away from the Navy?
That was the circumstances. And then in those days also, like in all dictatorship, number two wants to become number one. People joking for position. People look up at some senior officers as their godfather. Some look down on the juniors as their godson. So there was that, unprofessional.
There was a rivalry, competition.
Well, you see, if you are in a service that, you doubt your professionalism, obviously you will lean on somebody, to help you when you have a default. So people use that in the armed forces, because I believe somebody who's a professional, should not have a godfather.
And what do you mean by godfather?
You look up to a senior officer as a godfather, which means that if anything happens, you'll be able to, speak on your behalf. He will lobby for you. So some of those things were happening.
And did you have one of those?
I didn't have any godfather. I was like working as a professional somebody, because if you know your ropes, you know your skills, I don't think you need godfather.
So you were an orphan. You were an orphan.
That is correct.
In the professional setting, anyway.
That's very true.
Just so that we can understand what exactly happened, because I'm a bit lost how Yahya Jammeh came into the picture and made orders for someone to be detained in relation to a purely civil dispute. How did that happen? You said it was a commercial vessel. It was not a government vessel. And in particular, it was certainly not a military vessel. So how come Yahya Jammeh was giving orders for people to be detained at Mile 2 when the court was also essentially already involved?
Well, you see, during the time, in those days, I was like the one running the show. And in the armed forces, he only hears from one individual, and that was the chief of staff. Whatever the chief of staff tells him, that's what he will believe. If he go and tells him something different, that's what he will believe, and he will not ask. So people will use that as a way of damaging some officers, I should say, because you can go to him and tell him Officer A is doing so and so, and he will just say, remove him or transfer him, or he will call the PS, fire him.
Do you think that was what was going on in your situation?
Well, you see, if he had given me the opportunity and actually inquire what happened, I don't think that would have happened. But like I said, when he doesn't listen to other people, he listens to just one individual. It's become very difficult.
And why do you think he had so much influence over Jammeh?
The chief of staff,
Yes.
well, he trusted him because he's the one who put him there. So he thinks that whatever he tells him, yeah, that's the truth.
And what would be the normal procedure in a situation like this when you had to defend perhaps one of your junior officers in the Navy? What kind of process would take place? Would you send them straight to Mile 2, or was there a procedure?
The procedure was actually taken. That was when they constituted a board of inquiry. What they should have done at the time was to look at who was directly responsible and come up with a recommendation. So if the recommendation states that the duty officer was faulty or the head of the command was faulty, and then that's the time they should have taken action. But just a spontaneous action like that, take him to Mile 2, I mean, it was very wrong.
The board of inquiry happened after both of you were detained, isn't that correct?
That's very correct, and I was being taken from Mile 2 to go and attend the board of inquiry.
Would you say that was correct? Shouldn't it have been formed before you were detained at Mile 2?
That's very correct.
What would be the procedure? I mean, if it was you who had to discipline your junior officer, what would you have done?
I would have demoted him.
Do you feel that that was due process by just sending him straight to Mile 2?
It was very wrong. And then after he was released from Mile 2, he was dismissed from the job.
And what happened to you after you also spent, how many days did you spend at Mile 2?
Close to 21 days.
And what happened after that?
After that, I received my posting order that I've been posted to Ministry of Defense as a staff officer.
And when was this?
This was in November 2003.
And how did you come to be director of admin and logistics after that?
Naturally, when you are sent as staff officer at the Ministry of Defense, it's like they are just telling you to go in a freezer because there is no job there. You just go and sit. So it's like, you know, when they are trying to get rid of you. So when I realized that I wasn't doing anything, I decided to engage myself in a law program at the GDTI. So I go to work in the morning, I close by 1 o'clock, because there was nothing I was doing there. So I went to GDTI and pursue a diploma in law, just for me to keep myself busy.
So this was essentially a demotion from your previous position because of what they believed you had done?
That's very correct.
So what happened? How did you actually get to the position you were as director of admin and logistics in 2006?
After having spent some time at the Ministry of Defense, I received a posting order that I should report to the Defense Headquarters first as Director of Operations and Training. So I was there. Peter Singate was substantive director at the time, but he was away. So I occupied that position briefly. And then when he returned, and that was the time I was appointed Director of Admin and Logistics.
And this was the position you occupied in 2006 when you started explaining about the events surrounding the statements that Noor Cha made in March of that year.
That's very correct.
Can you tell us what happened on in March, almost at the end of March? It was on the 22nd day of March, I believe, or the 21st. Tell us what happened when you finished work on that day, and specify whether it was the 21st or the 22nd.
I went home, and then during the course of the evening, around 8 o'clock in the evening, I received a call from Joseph Jasseh, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense. And he said he got a call from the former Vice President, Aissatou Njai-Sidi, that she observed some troop movements, that there are some movements in town. So what are those movements for? Then, so he called me to inquire. Then I told Jasseh that, well, right now I'm also acting as Director of Operation and Training. I'm not sure of any operation that is ongoing at this time. However, just give me some time. Let me just drive through Senegambia. By then I was residing in Fajara. So let me just drive through to Senegambia and just watch the movements there. So I drove there, came back home, I called him, I said, well, I didn't notice any unusual movement. Then he said, okay, let's keep our fingers crossed.
And what date was this?
This was on the 22nd, the day of the coup.
Please go ahead.
Yes, and then I called him, told him what I observed, and then stayed at home. And then by 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, my wife's niece, got up, switched on the lights because she had some movements. And then, by then, this arresting team already entered the compound. And then when they saw the light on, they just broke one of the window pane. And then they shouted, "Come out, where are you?" And then I woke up and then opened the door. They came in, the gun pointed me, and they said I'm under arrest. They took me to the waiting vehicle outside. It was being driven by Suleiman Job. And in front, the driver's seat, you had a Tumbul Tamba with 4 arresting team.
Can you tell us who the arresting team were? And don't forget to mention their positions and ranks, please.
I remember Ismail Jame. On that particular day, I didn't know who he was because most of the state guard guys I'm not familiar with. So it was when he came to testify, because of his posture, he's tall and he stooped a little bit. That was the time I recognized him. Oh, this is the guy.
When he came to testify, where?
Here at the TRRC.
And what was he testifying to?
About some of the activities that he conducted during the time of...
In what position?
As a jungler.
Okay, so he was a member of the junglers.
He was a member of the jungler.
Who else was there?
I can only remember him. You see, before this time, I didn't know any of their names because they were at a different unit, the state guard. And to be frank with you, there was no interaction between us. They will recognize us, they will know us as officers, but for us to put an eye on them and recognize them.
And how were you arrested? Was it in the presence of your family or not?
That's very correct. The presence of my wife, my 2 children, and my wife's nephew and niece.
And how were you handled?
They shouted at me.
And these were junior officers shouting at you?
Yeah, they were private soldiers. So they thought they have all the powers to do whatever they wanted. And in a normal, everything be normal, in a normal situation, when you conduct arrests of a senior officer, I believe an equivalent officer should have been co-opted to arrest. But in the days of Yahya Jammeh, professionalism was thrown into the dustbin.
And did they tell you why they were arresting you at that point?
They didn't tell me at all.
But you complied and you went with them?
I complied, went into the vehicle, sat in the vehicle with the two junglers on board, and then Ismaila and his colleague entered my house and asked my wife to hand over my telephone to him. It was a new phone that I bought in Dubai. That was the latest Nokia phone. They took the phone. I believe it must be Ismaila. They took the phone. And then after I was released, I tried to dial the number. It was in service. I knew that it was not used during the time of the investigation. They stole it because, I informed Lang Tombo, the CDS then at the time. I said during the time of my arrests, my phone was stolen from my house and it's been used. And he said, well, hence I didn't know who actually took the phone. There's nothing he could do about it. I said, well, okay, then that's fine.
So you never got it back?
I never got it back.
Let's just go back to your arrest. Where were you taken to?
I was taken straight to the Mile 2 prison.
Were you arrested with someone else?
From my house, we went to Fajara Barracks, where we picked up Alpha Bar, and then drove straight to Mile 2.
Who was Alpha Bar? My apologies.
Alpha Bar was among those they claim tried to escape. And
what was his rank at the time?
He was a warrant officer.
And how was he arrested?
The normal arrest, because when we went to Fajara Barracks, he was sitting outside, being guarded by some soldiers. And then when we arrived, they just handed him over.
And you were driven straight into Mile 2?
That's very correct.
You didn't pass by the police station?
Never.
By the courthouse?
Never.
And what happened when you got into Mile 2?
When we got into Mile 2, we were processed. I was having my wedding band. They said it's not allowed to enter with metallic objects into the yard, into the prison. So my wedding band was removed from me. They told me that I will get it back in the event that I'm released. But that didn't happen.
So not only has your mobile phone been taken, your wedding band as well was taken?
Exactly.
Was that, what kind of wedding band was it? Silver, gold?
It was gold.
Okay. What happened after you were processed?
After we were processed, we were shepherded into different cells, into our cell, because I met Musa Savage there. So after we were processed, we moved into the main yard at the security wing, and we were ushered into the different cells.
Which part of the security wing?
Security wing in the prison, the main yard in the security wing of the Mile 2 prison.
Do you remember what number?
At the time, the cells at block number 5 wasn't numbered.
No, that's what I was after. It was in security unit number 5.
Number 5,
or
exactly.
Block number 5. Yes,
Exactly.
That's what I was after. Yeah, you said you met some people there. Who did you meet?
I met Musa Savage there during the time we were being processed. And then when I entered into my cells, I think some people were already there. I
Who was
saw
Musa Savage?
Musa Savage was State Guard personnel.
And who else did you meet when you went to security number 5?
I met Pierre Mendy, Aliou Cisse, Aliou Singate, Gassama, former chief security officer at the civil aviation. I saw a guy called, a civilian, Ali Job, Tamsir Jassi, Yaya Dabo, Bunja Dabo. I don't know
Do you
whether
know
unto
why these people had been arrested?
we were never told.
And when did you get to know why you were arrested?
The radio at the Mile 2 prison was on, so I think during, I don't know whether it was the next day that news came up that some people have been arrested for attempted coup. That was the time we knew that, oh, it was because of this that we were arrested.
So the radio announcement was referring to you people?
That's very correct. And immediately that happened. Even the prison authorities didn't even know what was actually happening. If they had known, they would have switched off the radio since, but they didn't know what was happening. And then I think after the announcement, they decided to put everything off, and we were in news blackout.
What subsequently happened to you?
I think a day or two later, I was taken to the NIA for interrogation. Upon arrival at the NIA,
Mr. Sarr, were you taken alone?
I was taken alone on that particular day.
Okay, please go ahead.
So I was taken alone, and then I was ushered into a room where you have chairs and table, just like in a conference setting. And then I was asked to sit down. Momodu Haidara was there, Lang Tombong Tamba was there.
Please tell us who these people were as you call out their names.
Mahmud Haidara was, I think, deputy director of NI at the time. Lang Tombo was the acting CDS. Baba Saho, member of the NIA. Demba Sow was from the police, serious crime unit. Alaji Martin was there. Musa Jame was there. Tumbul Tamba was there.
And who was Musa Jame?
Musa Jame was a personnel of the State Guard.
And Tumbul Tamba, you've already mentioned him as one of your arresting officers.
That's correct, from the State Guard also.
Was there anyone else there?
And some of the junglers, I can recognize Ismaila.
Anyone else?
Modu Jaju was there.
Is he known by any other name?
Rambo.
And you've said, identified him as a jungler. Why?
At that particular time, it wasn't known that these people, to us, it wasn't known that these people were special units called junglers. It was later, I think it was during that operation that, it became visible that, you had a special unit called junglers. And I think it was during that operation that they started wearing the black.
Is that what they were wearing when you saw them at the panel at NIA?
That's correct.
Was there anyone else part of the panel?
I think those are the names I could remember for now.
And who was heading them, as far as you know? Who was heading the panel?
It was Mahmud Haidara who was heading the panel.
And you said he was the deputy director of NIA.
At the time, yes.
Who was the director at the time?
I don't think at the time they were, the director was under arrest. Daba Marina was the director at the time, but because he was under arrest, so Mahmud Haidara stepped in.
And do you know why he was under arrest, Daba Marina?
Since we were all bundled as potential coup plotters, so I believe that it was because of the coup.
It was on the allegations of being part of the Ndur Champ coup plot.
That's very correct.
And where was he detained?
At the security wing also.
With you and the others?
That's very correct. I forgot to mention his name.
Thank you very much. But tell us what happened during that panel.
During the panel, when I seated, Langtombo told me that, he said, "Sir, we know that you are not part of the coup. We know that you are not involved. But perhaps you are informed. So tell us if you happen to know about it, or if you are informed, just tell us." I told him that the only thing I know was when I went to Ndur Champ's office, and he looked at this man's picture, or his portrait, and he said, "If I have the opportunity, I'm going to kick him."
And that is you mean
Yeah,
Jame by this man?
Exactly. I said, that's what I once heard from Ndur Champ, that's all. And then, I don't know whether it was Musa Jame or Tumbultamba, interjected and said, "As a senior officer, you want to tell us that you don't know what this man meant by saying that if he had the opportunity, he was going to kick this guy?" I said, "Well, I'm not in his mind. I cannot think for him. I don't know what he meant." So they said, "Well, you'll have to tell us. You'll have to admit." And then Ismaila was having a rubber truncheon, and then he hit me on the head. It did not have serious impact, though, because it was rubber.
Is that Ismaila Jame?
Ismaila Jame, exactly.
Did Haidara say anything to you?
Later, Haidara said, "Mr. Sarr, if you are not going to talk, we will bring you at a time that will be very inconvenient for you."
What did you understand this to mean?
At the time, I thought that maybe they were going to deprive me of sleep, and that they will take me to the NIA, perhaps at the time that I needed sleep most. That's what I thought, because at the time we never knew that these people conduct torture. I think that was the first time that, for me, to be aware that you have special squad that are responsible for torturing people. So I was having two minds. Perhaps they are going to ratchet up the torture, the beating, or maybe they're going to deprive me of sleep. I said, well.
So what eventually happened?
I was taken back to Mile 2 prison, and then I think a few days later, they came for me at Mile 2, and on our way going to Mile 2, I was being sandwiched.
Who came for you?
The junglers.
Who in particular?
Definitely, I cannot recognize them.
It wasn't Ismaila Jame or Modu Jaju, or?
It wasn't, but later Faring told me who their identity was, because he was at the State House, he worked with them, and he knows them.
Excuse me, who told you?
Faring Sayang.
All right. And who were they?
Faring told me that he knows them because he worked with them at the State House. So they were the people who actually came for me and escorted me to the NIA. On our way going, one of them was having a stick, like a truncheon, and then he started hitting me on the bridge of my nose, because by then my hands were cuffed at the back. So he started hitting me and blood spewed out, and they were saying, oh, you are the people who wanted to patrol this government. So we arrived at the NIA. I was ushered upstairs into a room where Musa Jame was sitting, and they asked me to read my statement, and he was recording the statement, and then later I appended my signature, and then I was taken back to Mile 2.
Did you appear before the panel on that day?
I did not.
And the first time you appeared before the panel, did they tell you the purpose of the investigation?
What they said was that there was this coup and that maybe I was informed.
Which coup were they referring to?
To the March 22nd, 2006 coup.
And that was the coup that was plotted by, or suspected to be plotted by Noor Cham, is that correct?
That's very correct.
And where was Noor Cham at this point?
Nobody knew his whereabouts at that time. But there was rumor in prison that maybe he escaped. So.
And you went back to Mile 2, and what subsequently happened?
I think after that second trip to the NIA, I didn't go back to the NIA until the day we were released, when we were taken back to the NIA. A whole bunch of us were released.
During your detention at Mile 2, or perhaps subsequent visits to the NIA, were you tortured apart from being beaten by a truncheon on your head by Ismaila Jammeh and beaten on the bridge of your nose until blood was spewing out by one of the other junglers?
No, I wasn't. Because I think what actually dampened that was perhaps the statement that Lang made, that I wasn't part of it. Perhaps I knew about it. Maybe that's what saved me.
So those were the only physical assaults that happened on you?
That's correct.
So how were you eventually released?
After that second inning, I didn't go back to the NIA until one day, I don't know the particular day, some soldiers came with a list of names for people to be released. So they had a list and they were going from cell to cell announcing names, and the prison officers were there to help them locate where we were. They would call a name, Mr. So-and-so, where is he? They say, oh, he's over there, and then they would go and release you, open, and they say, oh, you are released, pack your things. So.
And how long were you detained for?
About 11 days.
And did they tell you why they were releasing you?
When we went to the NIA, all of us were driven to the NIA, and then we went to an open space with chairs. And then the director then was Harry Sambu. So he told us that they had conducted their investigation and we were found not to be involved in the 22nd March 2006 coup. and that we have been released. Those who are in the military should report to their headquarters. And basically, that's what actually happened.
So just like that, you just reported back to work as if nothing happened?
That's very correct.
And what position did you assume when you went back?
I went back as director of admin, and I stayed for about 2 weeks when I received a letter of retirement, compulsory retirement, and then the next day, another letter came nullifying that retirement to dismissal that, I've been dismissed with immediate effect. Just 2 sentences. So
you were dismissed from the Gambia National Army?
that's very correct.
And did you eventually engage in any other employment after that?
After my dismissal, fortunately, I was managing some foreign trawlers, 2 trawlers as an agent. So that's the kind of business I was involved in.
So you were involved in private work?
Private business, exactly.
Did the letters, by any chance, the dismissal letter as well as the compulsory retirement letter, any of the 2, did it disclose any reason why you were either being dismissed or made to retire on a compulsory basis?
The compulsory letter that came states that, I think they quoted a section on the terms and conditions of service for officers, that based on that, I've been dismissed. No, I've been retired.
And what was that? What was the particular section or provision?
I have it in my bag, if you don't mind. I can
Yes, please.
retrieve it.
Thank you.
The subject matter says compulsory retirement. In accordance with section 14.8 of the Terms and Conditions of Service for Officers 2005, it has been decided to retire you compulsorily from the Gambia Armed Forces with immediate effect. This letter was written on the 19th of April 2006.
Do you know what that particular section says? Or perhaps what the grounds of compulsory retirement would be?
Well, I think they decided to just quote this section, but I don't think it has any relevance to my retirement because they must have to look for something to base their reason.
Can I have a copy of that letter, please? Do you feel that this had any connection with your previous arrest and detention?
I should think so, especially the comment I made at the investigation at the NIA that Durcham once said that he was going to kick him. I think that's what must have prompted the authority to...
Even though you were released and exonerated, you still feel that they were after you?
That's very correct.
What did your dismissal letter say?
I have it here. It was dated on the 20th of April, 2006. Subject matter, dismissal and restitution of national award. In accordance with the Gambia Armed Forces Act, Cap 19, Section 12, C, it has been decided to dismiss you from the Gambia Armed Forces with effect from 21st March 2006. In consequence thereof, the National Order Award conferred on you is hereby rescinded. This letter supersedes my first letter dated of 19 April 2006 by the Permanent Secretary Joseph P. Jassy.
Please hand over that letter to the usher. What was the implication of that particular dismissal letter?
Well, it just shows that due process is not being followed in the administration of the Gambia Armed Forces. It's like somebody can just get up on his own whims and just do whatever he feels like.
My question was more to the effect of a dismissal letter rather than a letter which was for you to retire on a compulsory basis. Would you, for example, get your benefits if you were dismissed?
Normally, when you are dismissed, you are not paid any benefit. It's like you go empty-handed.
And when you're retired, would you go at least with your benefits?
That's very correct.
So retirement was more honorable, especially within the service.
That's very correct.
And what award did they rescind? And when did you get this particular award and from whom?
This was in 2006. I was supposed to be conferred the national order by the president, but the event of 22nd March changed the whole.
Were you awarded or you were not awarded yet?
No, it was rescinded. I wasn't awarded at all.
The award had not yet been made.
It was never made.
But it was going to be made if this had not happened in between.
That's correct.
And what is the National Order Award? What does it mean?
Well, the National Award is for people who have displayed some exemplary character in their work, and particularly those of us in the military, you have shown higher level of professionalism, discipline.
And this is the kind of officer you were found to be before you were implicated in the 2006 coup d'etat.
That's very correct.
And how did you feel receiving this dismissal letter?
Well, I was happy in the sense that, you see, when you are in a military setting and your junior is promoted over you, you will never be comfortable. So when the letter came, I was happy. I said, thank God.
And this person, Joseph P. Jassy, was essentially your junior officer. He had actually worked under you at some point, and he was now writing a letter dismissing you from the Gambia National Army.
No, I wasn't referring to Joseph Jassy because when I was in Mile 2 prison during the investigation, Lang was already appointed as the CDS. And Peter, was my junior, was appointed deputy CDS. So.
Which Peter are you referring to?
Peter Singate. So for me, I don't think it was unethical, actually, in the military sense. Normally, when a junior is promoted over a senior, you move the senior somewhere else, but you don't allow the senior to work under a junior. It's not appropriate, it's not proper in a correct military setting. So I was happy.
Mr. Chairman, at this stage, I would like to tender the dismissal and rescission of National Award letter dated the 20th day of April, 2006, and signed by Joseph P. Jassy, Captain Retired, as Exhibit 128A, and the compulsory retirement letter dated the 19th day of April 2006, signed by the same person as Exhibit 128B.
Both requests are granted.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Sarr, was that the end of your arrest and detention when you were dismissed?
No, negative. No. In 2010, sometime in March, I think on the 13th of March, 2 personnel from the NIA came to my house in Kelsirin, and they said that I had to go with them to the NIA. I had some clarification to make,
As regards to what?
Well, they didn't tell me. They said, Mr. Sarr, please come with us. We've been asked to come and collect you, to go to our office so that you can, clarify certain gray areas that.
And you were out of the army now for 4 good years, engaged in your own private business. Did you suspect or have any inkling as to what this was about?
Never.
Did you eventually find out?
I was at the NIA for about 4 days. I think the 3rd day, they invited me to the board that they constituted. The head of the board at the time was Sukuta, late Sukuta.
Can you please tell us his name again? Sukuta what?
Sukuta Jame.
And who was he?
I think he was the head of the investigation team.
From which security outfit?
NIA.
Okay, please go ahead. Who else formed part of that panel?
I couldn't recognize the rest of the personnel there.
And this was after you were detained for 3 days at the NIA?
That's very correct, because I was arrested on a Saturday. Okay. On a Tuesday, I was invited to the panel at the NIA. And then Sukuta, before he posed his question, he lifted a piece of paper, maybe trying to make sense of what was written in the paper, and then he sat down. He said, Mr. Sarr, we were told by, Ndurcham told us that during the planning stage of the coup, they had a specific charity that they were supposed to take out. And that charity was supposed to be dumped at sea. And he said that Ndurcham told me about that charity and that had obliged to take a patrol boat and take the charity to sea. And then I told the panel that, in fact, 2006, he did a mention. I was not at the Navy at the time. I left the Navy in 2004. How was it going to be possible for me to leave my position as director admin, go to a service, a different service, the Navy, where they have a head, a commander? I say, we don't work like that in the military. Actually, I was not in the Navy. I was at defense headquarters, and it's not true. That's where the questioning stopped. And I said, okay, go and write your statement. And I wrote my statement, and I didn't sign it.
So this was in connection to the 2006 attempted coup d'etat by Ndurcham?
That's very correct.
And after you had been detained for 11 days at Mile 2, exonerated, dismissed from the army, after 4 years, they called you back to the NIA and were asking you about what had happened 4 years previously.
That's very correct. What happened was, there was a wave of arrests in February, March, people were being arrested, people like Lang, but no. I think 2000 and, no, Lang was arrested, Lang Tom was arrested, Obimbai, and some of these officers were arrested. And then when these people were arrested, I heard that, I got this information when I got into prison. Some of the coup plotters who were already serving sentence at the Maltu prison, I heard were called by the NIA and been asked certain questions. Perhaps they wanted to get somebody whom they haven't got any evidence on. So they called them and said that during the time of the 2006 coup, maybe some people were involved, but because of their position at the time, you were scared to mention their names. Now, what we want you to do is, if you call their names, we will arrest them, and then we will set you free. It was during that process that M.A. Barr was released. I don't know what he said at the NIA. He was released from prison.
Who was M.A. Barr?
M.A. Barr was convicted for a 2006 coup. He was a
What was his full name?
Momodu Ali Barr, I think.
And what was his position?
He was a finance officer
Where?
at the defense headquarters.
Okay.
So M.A. Barr, I don't know what he told them, whatever, but I think he actually manufactured a very good story and he was released. So Bunja and Dabo, he went to NIA and told them something that I didn't know what actually was said. But excuse me, after I was taken to the panel on Tuesday, on the Wednesday I was moved to Mile 2. On the Wednesday I was moved to Mile 2. And then Fufana was already there, he was already arrested. And then
Which Fofana?
Sergio Fufana. He came into my cell and asked me, MB, what happened? I said, these people, they arrested us for 2006 coup. 2006 coup? I said, yes. I said, okay. Bunja also came to my cell, greeted me, and asked me, what happened? I said, well, I don't know.
So Bunja Dabo had been convicted or not of
yes,
the
he was serving
2006
sentence
coup?
for the 2006 attempted coup.
Who else was serving a sentence for the 2006
Ali
coup?
Job, Tamsir Jassi, Yaya Dabo, Pierre Mendy, Wasa Kamara, Faring Sayang, the Marabu man.
Who was the Marabu man?
I forgot his name. I think it's Fatih, I think. He was serving sentence.
And they had been tried by a court and sentenced.
And they were serving various prison terms. So
what did Bunja Dabo say to you?
he asked me what happened. I said, I don't know. And then after a month or two, Fofana was invited. Now, before I get to that point, after I was taken to Mile 2 on a Wednesday, the Saturday, they came for me at around 11 o'clock at night.
Who came for you?
Prison warders, they opened my cell and they said that I was wanted outside. I said, okay, but it's something that I had prepared for. Because during the 2006 investigation, the coup investigation, I saw how my colleagues were treated. So.
And how were they treated? You haven't told us anything about that.
Yeah, I saw how they were treated in the sense that when they were taken to the investigative panel and when they return, you'll actually see them that they've actually been dealt with, that they've been tortured. Bruises, swollen faces, yes.
And can you just give us a few names of people that had been tortured at the NIA?
Wassa Kamara was seriously tortured. Alpha Ba, late Alpha Ba. Abdullahi Kujabi, I forgot to mention his name. Abdullahi Kujabi.
And apart from the fact that you knew they had been taken to the NIA, did they tell you personally that this is what happened to them there?
The second time I went to the NIA, after I have signed my statement, they brought me down, and I was waiting for a vehicle to take me back to Mile 2. And then some of the junglers said that they are waiting for Lai, because Abdullahi Conte was coming. So the moment he arrived, they placed a plastic bag over his head, and then they led him towards the wall. He hit his head on the wall, okay? And then they removed the plastic bag, and then he was taken upstairs. And I saw Fatajo, I forgot to mention his name. He was actually beaten. I think they were accusing him of in possession of a weapon, whether a hunting weapon or whatever. Yeah, you can actually see the injuries.
What were the extent of his injuries?
Swollen face, and you can see blood.
And you personally witnessed this?
I didn't witness this. I just saw him sitting down. And then somebody was asking him a question. He didn't answer, and he was given a serious slap, and blood, oozed out from his mouth.
And did you see that?
I saw that myself.
And who did that? Who slapped him?
One of the junglers.
Can you identify which one?
No, okay. I cannot.
Kindly tell us what happened after you were called on that night to go outside and answer.
Yeah, exactly. So I doubled up because I knew what awaits me at the NIA.
And what was that?
That they're going to possibly torture me, metal torture to me. So.
And what do you mean by you doubled up?
Some of the clothes that I brought in from the NIA, because when I was detained at the NIA, I requested for my clothes. So some clothes were brought to me, and I wear as much clothes as I can. So I was cuffed in front, and then I was drove to the NIA, and then ushered into a dark room. So I entered. They asked me to sit on the floor by the wall, and then I leaned on the wall. They said, no, move away from the wall. I moved away from the wall. And then after some time, I got adjusted to the darkness, so I could recognize Burambo, Modu Jaju.
Was his face visible?
His face was invisible, but because of his posture, when he stands, I think he shifts his weight on one leg, something like that. Because I know him. He worked briefly at the Marine unit as a driver. So I believe his team came for us on that day.
So even though his face was covered, you could clearly recognize him because of his posture?
That's very correct.
Did you recognize anyone else?
I didn't recognize the others.
So what happened in the dark room?
So I leaned off the wall a little bit, and then they started flogging me at the back. The whip they were using had a sharp object at the end. They were whipping me, and I was shouting as if I was really receiving the impact.
Are you saying you were not receiving the impact because you were padded up?
Yes, I was receiving the impact, but not as if I was like wearing a single shirt. So I padded up, and then they flogged me. They were taking turns. They flogged me until I don't know whether by instinct they realized that maybe they were not working hard enough. So the one came and grabbed my bag, my back, and he realized that, I had, I'd padded. So
How many of them were whipping you?
I think there were 3 of them. Modu Jaju didn't take part in the whipping. He was like coordinating them.
And
When
were you
this-
the only person there being whipped?
Yes, but on that particular day, Fofana was also taken. I think after they finished with me, they took Fofana inside the room. So we were both taken to the chambers on that day.
The torture chamber. So tell us what happened after they realized that you had extra clothing underneath. What
Yeah,
did they do?
They lifted my clothes and then started hitting me on my bare back. And as a result, I suffered some laceration.
What was on the end of the whip? What was causing the lacerations?
Just some sharp object. And the jacket that I put on, I even have it here. You can see how it actually ripped through it.
Can you please show us? If you can just hold it up so that the commissioners can see. So the whip basically penetrated through the thick jean material.
Exactly.
So after your clothes were removed, I assume that is what it did to your flesh.
No, this was before my clothes was removed.
Yes, I mean after your clothes were removed, then what happened?
Exactly.
Did it rip through your flesh?
That's very correct.
Thank you very much. Can we have the clothing so that we can tender it, if that's okay, or would you
Yeah,
like
that's
to keep
okay,
it for sentimental reasons?
After prison, I never put it on.
Mr. Usher, can we please have the piece of clothing? We would like to tender it as Exhibit 128C, please, Mr. Chairman. So tell us after your clothing was removed.
Request is granted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, for continuing before you accepted the request. You've already said that your clothes were removed and your bare back was being flogged with this whip which had sharp objects at the end. And I've already asked whether or not it penetrated through your flesh like it did the jean jacket, and you said yes. Did anything else happen? What were the nature of your injuries after you were flogged?
After I was taken to Mile 2, yes, the injuries, was actually serious. And then the next day, the medic came and looked at us. But at the time, we were not allowed, to go to the hospital. Because I think normally after you are tortured, they don't want the public to know what actually happened. So we were left there until our wounds healed up.
And did you receive any kind of medical treatment? You've mentioned that you were seen by the medic.
The medic came and gave us some painkillers.
Did the lacerations need any stitches?
No.
And what happened to Fofana?
Fofana also received the same treatment,
And what was the nature of his injuries?
same laceration.
Was that the only time you were tortured at the NIA?
That was the only time.
And what eventually happened in relation to this case?
Then I think a month later, sometime in May, Fofana was invited to the NIA to give his statement. And then, when he came with his statement, he showed me his statement, what Bunja wrote. Because what the NIA actually said that Ndulcham told them, Ndulcham did not tell them that at all. They were just using tricks. It was Bunja who went to the NIA and told them that Ndurcham told him, Bunja, that I was supposed to take out a charity at sea.
How did you get this information? Who told you?
I saw Fofana's statement that was what Bunja said. And then, I think what happened after my interrogation at the NIA, Bunja was called, I think 2 or 3 days later. I think was told that what he said about me was false. Because when you look at the timeline, that could not have been possible for me to leave my headquarters and go to the Navy. And then from Fofana's statement, I saw the changes. He canceled that statement where he mentioned me, and he said, oh, he forgot that it was Fofana who was supposed to go out to sea. Hence, he was at the Navy at the time to take out the charity. So it was I was charged, and I was left at the prison to languish.
For how long did you languish at the prison?
For 5 years, 4 months, and 2 weeks. But sometime in 2013, I was invited to the NIA. I met with the then director, Liz.
What's his first name?
Luis Gomez. Luis Gomez. So he told me that they had conducted their investigation and that I was innocent. They had written to Yaya Jammeh for my release, but they have not received any response from him. So he said 1 year later, they also sent a reminder to him for my release, but they did not receive any response.
And why were they writing to Yaya Jammeh for your release? Was he responsible for your imprisonment?
Yeah, normally when somebody is detained at the prison, it's only Yaya who can give instruction for that individual to be released. So they don't have the authority to unilaterally release me. It has to come from Yaya himself. So they were waiting for him, and he told me that, see, we don't want to push, we don't want to write again because at least Yaya will think that, we have special interest in you.
So Yaya Jammeh was aware that you were in prison?
He was very well aware because there were some correspondence that my late uncle wrote to him appealing for my detention, and he wrote back to say that, oh, I was accused of a coup, and that my trial was to start January. I have the correspondence here, and that it was due to sheer luck that I wasn't taken to court.
Can we please have a copy of those correspondences, please? Please carry on and tell us what was recorded in the correspondence.
So correspondence, we are going back and forth from my uncle to State House, you see, and then Liz told me that because I was not the only one detained. I was also arrested with Walinyang, and Walinyang, Fofana, Antuman Saho, Drame, the current deputy CDS, but they did not.
What about Antuman Saho? Which Antuman Saho are you referring to?
The former Marine Unit Commander.
Okay, please go ahead.
But he didn't, he was not at the Mile 2 prison, and Yankuba Drame. They were not at the Mile 2 prison. So it was myself, Walinyang, and others who came after us who were detained. And those people took the service of a lawyer, and they went to courts, and then they filed for habeas corpus for them, and then they were released. So when I went to Liz told me that, why can't I, use the same channel those people use? Then I told him that, you see, Liz, Walinyang once met Liz at the hospital. And Liz told him that, well, you people, we've finished with your investigation. Your release letter has gone. So I was waiting, So that's what I told him. He said, but nothing is happening. Why can't you go through the same process so that, you can be released? Then I said, okay, I will explore that possibility.
Who was Walinyang?
Walinyang was a military officer of the Gambia National Army. He was also arrested.
Was it in connection to the 2006 coup?
I should think so, yes, connection with 2006 coup.
Please go ahead.
So I went back to prison, and I said to myself, knowing the person I am, if I want to push this, who knows? Maybe I can come with a counter, measures, and maybe ask these people to file something against me, even though they didn't have anything against me, but it could happen.
So you decided just to let sleeping dogs lie?
That's very correct, because Yaya behaves as if he's perfect, like, he doesn't make mistake. So whoever is arrested on his order, he will make sure that person is there until he is ready.
And did you wait until he was ready?
I waited until sometime in July, when he announced amnesty for people who were incarcerated, so I was part of that.
Was it amnesty or pardon?
It was pardon, the pardon people, and I was included in the pardon, and then...
Sorry, Mr. Sarr, even though there was nothing to pardon you about because you had not been tried and convicted. Is that correct?
That's very correct. In fact, that was the reason why the day I was released, GRTS was there at the prison ground. I called the attention of David, the director. I told him that, look, I wasn't convicted, I was detained. Do you want me to go on air and inform the public that I wasn't convicted, I was detained for 5 years? He said, yeah, you can go ahead. So that's what exactly happened. On the day of our release, I was interviewed. I said, well, as far as I know, I did not commit any offense. I was in charge. I was left languishing at the Mile 2 prison. And as a detainee, all your rights are seized. You don't have visits. You are treated like somebody who's on quarantine.
So it was incommunicado detention?
Complete communicado.
For 5 good years?
5 years, 4 months, and 2 weeks.
You didn't see any member of your family?
Never.
Did you have access to a lawyer?
Like I told you, I didn't want to involve the service of a lawyer, of possible repercussion from Yaya.
And what were the conditions of detention like?
Well, you see, I was in prison on 2 occasions, and I already prepared myself that, it's the same condition, that the condition hasn't changed, so.
So you were accustomed to prison life?
Well, you see, nobody No, no human being will be accustomed to prison life. But at least since you were there before, at least you can manage. So I knew the condition, that it's going to be a small mattress on a raised platform, and then you'll be given a chamber pot where you will do your personal hygiene. And the food is terrible, always terrible. So, but
So what eventually happened to you?
well, after my release,
Yes.
after my release, I stayed in the country. Although people were telling me, "Oh, you have to leave. Your colleagues are leaving. Why can't you leave and go to the neighboring country?" I said, "Well, I don't think I'm a threat to anybody. So for me to leave Gambia and go somewhere else, I don't think it's necessary." So I stayed until the change of government, and then announcement was made over the radio and TV that those who felt that they were unlawfully dismissed from the service should write, to the PMO. They have constituted a board that they will look into this illegal dismissal. I wrote to the board. The first letter I got was in prison at all. They told me that my detention was not as a result of my dismissal, was not an executive, was not from the executive, and that I have to channel my petition to the ombudsman. So I wrote to the ombudsman and then sat and wait for them to call me, but that didn't happen until a few months later. I got a call from the SIS, that they invited me for a meeting. I went to the SIS. They tried to
Mr. Usher, can you just kindly give him the note and then let him continue with his testimony? Thank you. Please proceed.
So the letter I got from the PMO wasn't pleasing at all, because it was like they were trying to justify Jammeh's action to say that, "Oh, your dismissal was not as a result of an executive interference." So it was like I dismissed myself.
So this was the SIS, which had replaced the NIA, basically, the new improved NIA, known as the SIS now.
No, it was the first letter I received from PMO. And then, like I said, months later, the SIS called me, and I was interviewed about my arrest, release, and I think they wrote back to PMO to confirm that my dismissal was as a result of an executive decision.
Yes, my point was that they were reporting on the activities of the NIA, because, after the change of government, the NIA was replaced by the SIS. They changed their name, essentially.
That's very correct.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
And then I think they sent their findings to PMO. In the interim, I was invited to Defense Headquarters, Joint Headquarters, and met with the Army Commander, Mama Cham. So he asked me about my situation. I told him what had happened. I've written to the PMO, and stuff. And then I told him that I don't think it will be possible for me to come back into the service because most of the people that we train are now in charge. So I don't think it will be ethical for me to put on uniform again. And then he said, okay, then that's fine. I said, alternatively, they can retire me. I go with my benefit. And then he said, okay, he will talk to the CDS. He said he would also look at the possibility of, discussing with the CDS for a military attaché appointment like what they did for, he mentioned Fofana and Hassan. I said, okay, then that's fine. Anytime I'm available.
What eventually happened?
Well, later the PMO wrote to me that they've decided to reinstate me from the day I was dismissed up to 17th of August 2017. Okay? But they will not pay me backlog of salary. They will only pay me my retirement and gratuity. They will pay my gratuity and retirement. Okay.
What do you mean they were going to reinstate you? Were you being offered another position or the same position that you had?
I was not. I think the reason for that letter was they said to make my gratuity a little bit fatter. Because if they had not done that, you will see that the gratuity I was going to have was going to be like a pittance. So they decided to link it, so that I can have that long period of work time.
So did you get the gratuity and the pension?
Eventually, I got it, and then sometime last year, I was watching the TRRC when one of the pardon soldier, I forgot his name. One of the commissioners asked him whether he received his back payment during the period he was incarcerated in prison. He said yes. And then I said, oh, but these people are not fair to me. If we were all accused for the same offense, even though I didn't spend that long in prison, okay, there was a break, 2006 up to 2010, but I was rearrested for the same offense. If they had to come out of prison and then being paid their salary for all that period, then why are they leaving me behind?
And what witness are you referring to? The testimony of which witness?
Ahmed Babu. No, not Ahmed Babu. Babu Jangha. Babu Jangha.
Please go ahead.
So I heard him saying that, oh, they had paid, they were paid all their backlog of salary. Then I said, then these people, they are not fair to me. At least they should have called me and asked me what actually transpired. But they didn't, they paid them. So, okay, then I decided to write to PMO to petition them that, this is what happened. Hence, those that I was accused with have received their backlog of salary. I think for the purpose of equity and justice, I think it would be better for them to also consider me for a backlog of salary. But they didn't write back. So.
And to date, have you received your back payment for salary?
Nothing up to today. I wrote the letter last year, August, but they never even bothered to even respond.
And apart from the impacts, the financial impacts of your unlawful detention and dismissal, can you tell us what other impact it's had on your life and the life of your family?
Well, actually, the time I was doing my business, that was source of income. So, see, that was cut short. And then the time I was arrested, I used to take my children to school, where I live, because of the traffic jam there. So it was like their education was stopped briefly until family members came in and offered some help so that they can continue their education. So that's what exactly happened.
I would like to just tender the correspondence that you mentioned in your testimony between your uncle, Hadiruddin Davis, and the President's office. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to tender a bunch of correspondence between the uncle and the Office of the President, dated the 19th day of August, 2013, 28th day of August, 2013, 3rd day of December, 2013, and the 5th day of June, 2014, as Exhibit 128, D, E, F, and G. Thank you.
Request granted.
And Mr. Sarr, do you have your correspondence with the PMO?
I submitted a copy to the reparation committee. I handed over to the guy at the first office on your right, the first port of call. That's where I handed over, and he told me that he was going to pass it over to the reparation committee.
Thank you very much. We will follow up on that and then tender it in due course. Do you have any other relevant documents here that you would like to tender or bring to the attention of the Commission before we conclude?
The documents I have here are my postings from Commander Navy to the Ministry of Defense.
That's fine. Those are not relevant for the meantime. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to the chairman for any questions he may have, or the commissioners, and then they might give you an opportunity to make some final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma Council, and thank you, Mr. Sarr, for your testimony. I'm sorry that you had to endure 64 months and 2 days of languishing in Mile 2 and the detentions at NIA headquarters. They should not have happened to a very senior person in the service, commander of the Navy. I don't know what your Navy comprised, whether or not you have patrol boats, battleships, even frigates. Even if those things weren't there, you were still a senior officer of the armed forces of a country who should not have gone through the kind of humiliation and inhuman treatment that you received. So we share your pain and the difficulties in that area. Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Commissioner Carr, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Sarr, and sorry for what happened to you. I just have a simple question, because we've had previous witnesses who came here who were taken to the NIA and tortured, who've told us that they continue to have serious health implications as a result of that. So my question is, since you were also beaten, do you have any health difficulties that you face right now?
No, fortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Mr. Sarr, you may proceed to make any final remarks that you have. Please do so now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, all of the protocols observed. What I would like to say here is that we have gone through a lot in this country, and we have to accept that some of these things are destined by God. What is not supposed to happen to you will not happen to you. We in the Gambia, we consider ourselves religious. But when you look at the behavior of some of us, it's like we lack faith. Because I believe somebody who has faith will try to do the right thing. You will not snitch on your comrade or your fellow human being. You wait for your turn. If you are going to get a certain position, you wait for it. When God time comes, when the hour comes, you will get it. I watched so many testimonies here at the TRRC of some junglers who came here and said that what they were doing, they didn't know that those things were illegal. But they came here saying those things to protect themselves. During our training, the British left a training doctrine that every recruit has gone through, and that is, we are told that any action that you perform in the military that is illegal, you'll have to justify it. They knew it. Some of the things that they were doing was deliberate, because in Yahya Jammeh's time, professionalism doesn't matter. What matters was, if you can do Yahya Jammeh's bidding, you are fine, you will get promoted. Because at that time, the standard of the armed forces was actually lowered. People who were not even qualified to become officers became officers. Those who felt that they were sidelined and were not considered to be officers, they also started snitching, lying, so that they would get to the top. It was happened during the time of Yahya Jammeh. Those of us who became victims during his reign should know that this is not the first time it is happening in the world. This world is not a perfect world. It's a world where so many evil things happen. We always question the physical things that happen to us without looking at the spiritual side of things. When something happens, yes, we are all human beings. We will question the reason why it happened. But if we sit down in our quiet moment, you will see that, well, these things that happen is destined to happen. In the days of Firauna, God appointed leaders based on the character of the people or the generation at the time. During the time of Sir Dawda, by then I was a young man, I didn't know what was happening, but I heard that the civil service was one of the best in West Africa or in Africa. But when Yahya came, civil service was decimated. It was like political patronage, and you have to align yourself somewhere, or you have to be a member of a cabal. Everybody wants to become an echo in Yahya Jammeh's radar screen, for them to be observed, for them to be recognized. Perhaps it's based on our character. I think we have to go back and put our hope and trust in God and have strong faith. Because I believe what happened was based on lack of faith. We saw religious leaders who were playing by the gallery because of what? Greed, avarice. If I don't blow Yahya Jammeh's horn, my brigade will not be buttered. I mean, you forgot that your luck is not in the hands of Yahya Jammeh. Your luck will come from God. God will not come down and give us something. That's why we are here in this world. He uses us. My going to prison, I didn't blame Yahya Jammeh for it. Something that was destined to happen. Yes, it happened. And he uses people like Bunja to say certain things against me that didn't happen, because he wanted to go out of prison. He wanted to use somebody as a springboard to scale the fence of the prison and go out and enjoy with his family. These are all lack of faith. People are in prison. You see them with prayer beads, enchanting, supplication, doing all these kind of things. But inside their heart, the heart is what is bothering them. So I think we have to go back and put our hope and trust in God. We will question the physical things, yes. We will question them, we are all human beings. But nothing happens for nothing. There is always a reason why something happens. Always a reason. Those who died during the reigns of Yahya Jammeh, those who were tortured. Well, I want to send a message to them for them to take heart. That's how God has designed their fate. That's how it was supposed to be. They are their father, loved ones, lives were supposed to be cut short because of Yahya Jammeh's viciousness. Like I said, if you are not supposed to go through certain difficulties, you will not go through those difficulties. When God wants to bless an individual, he will see how he will open doors that were previously closed. People who were trying to put an obstacle on your progress, God will remove them and place somebody there who will actually channel things for you, and you get what you want. So like I said, let us try and have Iman. Let our faith be strong. When your faith is strong, I don't think you will sit down and try to plot against your fellow human being just because you want his position. And there are times when you get somebody's position, if it's not meant for you, you won't last there. Maybe you will just be there for a short time. So all I would want to say is, I didn't have anything against anybody. Those who touched on me, Jammeh, who was there, who delayed my release. I know he didn't delay my release. It was God who said I should be there. And I think because of the faith I had, maybe that's why I did not have any mental problem or any kind of problems. Yes. So, like I said, I don't think I have to say I forgive anybody because they didn't cause it. It was God who said it should happen, and it has happened, and so be it. Thank you very much, sir.
Merci, mon frère. I'm sorry, Mr. Sarr, thank you so much for that. But I agree with what you've said. But I think God also gives us some strength to fight injustice, to fight those who impose brutalities on other human beings, to fight for truth. And at the end of the day, truth prevails. Yes, we can take a lot of things here and there, but I do hope that God is always on our side for truth. Stand up for justice, stand up for truth. Those are the things that at the end of the day would prevail. But thank you enormously for your testimony and for these very good concluding remarks. That brings us to the end of our proceedings for today. We will resume tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.